Welcome to the Big L, your unofficial source for Libertarian Party news, arcana, and information for the liberty-minded political junkie. Find us at BigLPodcast.com. Here's your host, Libertarian Party insider and the pink flame of liberty, Karen Ann Harlos.
Well, hello there, my beautiful Liberty peeps. I am now trying to be on the advanced or more frequent recording schedule. We shall see how that goes. I have a feeling it will be, some weeks will be more than one episode a week, and then might be a few in between, along with bonus patron episodes. Remember that the show patrons can ask me to cover certain issues, so please consider that if there is something specific you would like me to address. Otherwise, I rarely run out of material to rant about. It just might not be the same things you would like me to rant about. So the thematic subject of at least the next few episodes, I'm calling it the Libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party. I remember the first time I heard that phrase, I was highly amused. I immediately grokked that it was half tongue-in-cheek. And then later, when I found out what tremendous butthurt it caused amongst certain libertarians that take themselves way too seriously, I liked it even more. But perhaps that will be something covered in a bit. As I have recounted in the past, I was quite the moderate when I joined the Libertarian Party. I had come from being a pretty apolitical rhino, and that was, the background that I had, a typical evangelical Christian rhino. I knew I had favored small government to the extent that I even understood what the hell that meant. Sadly, I don't think many people actually do. I certainly didn't. I don't think half of the people who call themselves conservatives or Republicans know. And it takes such a stepping out of the box to even consider these different options. And unless something shakes you out of that, life is just too busy, and brooding on the problems of political power is rather dull, and the awakening is rather grim. We were born a slave and we will die one.
Well, that sucks.
Certainly does put a fire in one's belly. And most apropos today, this little quote was a memory on my Facebook feed. And I hope it inspires you as it has me. And here we go. Cue up dramatic music. Many times we think someone is ranting, but they're actually speaking with conviction, and everyone has just forgotten the sound of real passion. We're so afraid of absolutes and a strong gut in digging in your heels that we dismiss the powerful voice of a lonely fighter. Listen for quiet strength, for humble confidence. It's not often someone will stand for what is right, what is true, what is pure. More often, we're afraid to admit we're afraid because the truth is so blinding in a dark world. And this was attributed to a Mr. J.S. Park. And I'd like you to take a listen to these two clips.
I'm BigL013, and I have the honor of rising to second the nomination of Lee Wrights for Vice President of the United States of America. In American politics, it's a known fact that you choose a presidential ticket strategically. You choose a presidential ticket with balance. You choose a presidential ticket that can appeal to all voters. You choose a presidential ticket that can reach out to all voters. That's how you choose a presidential ticket. Lee Wrights is that strategic choice. When you go to the shoe store, you don't buy two right shoes. You don't have a ticket that only runs on policy. You need passion to go with your policy. Lee Wrights is that passion. I want to say something that I heard today from Governor Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson won the nomination of our party, but Lee Wrights won the debate. We need that kind of debater on this ticket. We need that passion. We need that full-throated defense of liberty, like all of you. I'm from the Libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party. We need a libertarian from the Libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party on the ticket, and Lee Wrights is the original libertarian from the Libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party. Now, this party's made mistakes in the past. In 2008, we nominated a ticket that didn't have balance, that wasn't strategically designed to appeal to all voters. And we suffered from that. We lost activists, we lost donors, and at some level we lost some credibility. 2012 is our opportunity to get that credibility back by nominating a balanced ticket of Gary Johnson and Lee Wrights. Now, I have the honor of serving you on the Judicial Committee of this party, and I serve with Judge Jim Gray on that Judicial Committee, and I have nothing but praise for Judge Jim Gray. He is articulate, he is intelligent, he's a good person. But in politics, you have a president who's a nice guy, and you have a vice presidential candidate who's a hammer. Lee Wrights is a hammer. So I ask you to nominate Lee Wrights to be that hammer for Governor Gary Johnson, so liberty will win.
My name's Karen Ann Harlos. You all have heard from me before when I was endorsing Darryl Perry. And I was asked just a few moments ago, actually, if I'd be willing to speak for Will Coley. And I said, sure. So this is not going to be nearly as prepared as last time, and I'm certainly not as professionally dressed as before, but I think that this really reflects on us as libertarians, that we can do things on the spot and be both formal and informal. And I don't think our party is about respectability politics, so I do not mind that I'm up here in jeans and a t-shirt. Now, first thing I would like to say is, even though I had endorsed somebody else, we all need to get behind Governor Johnson. He is our nominee, and we need to move this party forward. And I would like to say something about Governor Johnson that I've respected extraordinarily much, is in his campaign he has conducted it with class. And that is something that I greatly respect. Now, Gary spoke before, and unfortunately I might have to say some things that are a little bit critical, not necessarily of Governor Johnson, but of things that are of great concern to me. Gary spoke about representing us all and asked for us to choose his particular vice presidential nominee. But as you know, as libertarians, we select these separately, and we don't necessarily have to take his choice. And he said he wanted to represent us all, but I respectfully say that his choice does not represent us all, and it is going to exclude some of us. And what I ask of all of you, and I would say the person that would accomplish this most is Will Coley, but I ask of all of you, do not split us. Do not split us the way Trump and Hillary have split their parties. Make sure that if you're going to, select a vice presidential candidate, that one person will then represent the rest of us that maybe are not necessarily feeling represented. We do have a wide variety and diversity of views here. I make no bones about it that I come from the Libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party, and I want to see us also represented here. And I think Governor Johnson will do some marvelous things for us, and he presents some more pragmatic side. But I ask that you balance out this ticket with someone that will represent the rest of us and not split the party activist base. Now, as far as some of my criticisms, and I hope mean this not with incredible disrespect, but out of a love I have for this party. Gary Johnson's nominee, or selected, he would like to be our vice presidential nominee, just joined this party. And I haven't been with this party a great deal of time, but I can tell you when I first joined, I was asked to do things for the Libertarian Party of Colorado. And I declined. I said, I have not yet paid my dues. I do not yet know the culture of this party. And we're talking about someone who just read our platform. I had for myself a minimum of a year in this party of going out and doing outreach booths and volunteer efforts and put in my dues before I would ask for people to give me some kind of position. And I don't think we should be doing this for one of our highest office, and I hope this is coming across with respect and just out of passion and love. Now, Gary also spoke about we're trusting him to get the message out, and we do need to trust him. But there will be two people to do this. So let's balance this out with someone who will know some of the other aspects of our message that we can really trust both of them. And Gary also spoke about who will get media attention, and unfortunately he spoke about the problems where Judge Gray that one time did not get the media attention. Well, I think Will Coley can do this. He represents an underrepresented segment of our population. He could reach the Muslim community that has felt disenfranchised by the two major parties, and I think that this would be phenomenal for our party. John McAfee spoke about there being a lack of women and minorities. Well, I believe that Will Coley can also reach some underrepresented areas. So I asked you yesterday for Darrell to stick close to principles, and I recited to you our party statement of principles, and I ask that you all bring that to mind, that you stick close to principles, and to run with Governor Johnson, that you would pick somebody who really, really sticks close to principles and keep our party base, keep us from in our roots and where we know where we came from. And I'm sorry this wasn't as polished as my other one, but I hope that I've spoke from my heart and that you will represent us all in your choices. We select our vice presidential nominees separately. I ask that you choose Will Coley or someone that has also dedicated the time to this party and didn't just read our platform 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Here we have two people, different years, pleading for a radical candidate to balance out the moderate. And we both failed, but the passion lives, but not as hot as it should live. And being a religious person, I like to use imagery from holy texts. I'm done apologizing for that. The rabid anti-theist can kindly go get bent. And a rebuke was given in one of these texts to a group that would eventually turn the world upside down, as we want to do. But rather than a deity speaking to mankind, I am applying this to my thoughts as I wonder why the Libertarian Party is often held in such scorn by the very people that we need, radical individualists who still participate in politics to mitigate the terror of the state, or those that would perhaps consider doing so if there was something worth getting lathered up for. And it is these words, I believe, that these small L libertarians are saying to us today. I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I could wish you were cold or hot. So then, because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will vomit you out of my mouth. And that too often describes us. We're bleh. And another passage describes this pitiful state. I have this against you. You have abandoned the love you had at first. And you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how shall it be made salty? It is from then on good for nothing but to be thrown out and to be trampled underfoot by men. Now, that's a long way to get around to my point, which, of course, what is the point? What is the point of all this we are doing? I was sloshing my way through the implications of this glorious freedom when I was a brand new libertarian, and I was invited as a token moderate to the Libertarian Party Radical Caucus discussion group. And my bona fides to get into that group was apparently I had correctly and very quickly assessed that a certain moderate that I was arguing with on Independent Political Report was a pompous ass.
Pompous ass. That's me.
And apparently that showed I had great wisdom. So back to the Radical Caucus discussion group. It uses the phrase we started here with, the libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party, and it uses it in a way that's not to be taken so seriously. And anyone who acts like they ran over their damn dog is just not really getting it. Perhaps at the end of these particular portions, I'll recount some tales from the land of the hurt butt.
I had to take a bath because my butt hurts.
I have encountered from libertarians who just find this phrase horridly offensive. Well, I never. But back to the journey, the Radical Caucus. And if you don't know what a caucus is, at least in the Libertarian Party, it is a special interest group internal to the party with some sort of goal or common interest. The mission of the Radical Caucus, in part, and before I continue, I was once a member of the LPRC, which is the Libertarian Party Radical Caucus. I'm no longer a member, as I'm no longer a member of any caucus. I find it to be a conflict of interest with my LNC duties. So while I am still just as philosophically aligned with the LPRC, I resigned my membership when I was running for party secretary. And I've come to the conclusion that no LNC member should be the member of any caucus, even though I was one when I was Region 1 rep. And it did cause some conflicts. But back to the original point. This is the LPRC's mission. And it is a mission to which I absolutely subscribe. And I quote, "We are a group of self-identified radicals working within the membership of the Libertarian Party who support the re-radicalization of the LP and further to promote a clear radical vision of libertarianism through education and electoral advocacy, both within the LP and outside of it. The LPRC will not shy away from speaking from the root of libertarian thought. We believe it is futile to make libertarian ideas non-threatening in order to placate the enemies of liberty. Our ideas are going to be scary to many who have considered neither their proven history nor their logical sense. Abolishing slavery was a scary thought to many in the 1800s, and the abolition of other unjust government policies now is no different. We will always seek to treat individuals as intelligent, if perhaps stubborn, competent individuals, and thus we will not fear presenting them with the scary libertarian ideas that we have available. They must decide for themselves. Some may take years to adopt them, many never will, but their children might. Only by treating individuals as intelligent adults will libertarianism ever succeed over the long term. While the LPRC commits to speaking for a bold, consistent, and radical libertarian agenda, we make an effort to see moderate libertarians as our allies, not our enemies. We will not waste time and energy and goodwill attacking them. We will fight beside them for as long as they are willing to go and be glad for the help." And I love all of that. I would have its baby if I could. And in a much lesser way, quite obviously, but similar to the way the statement of principles of the party impacted me, That mission statement resonated, particularly the part that talked about not pissing in our own pants before daring to utter a consistent libertarian idea. And this patronizingly paternal attitude that we so often have, that when speaking to other people, we were like, well, they can't handle these ideas. They can't handle it. We can handle it. I can handle it. But the poor unwashed masses cannot handle it. So we need to hide the ball. That's not a good way to build a healthy movement. Some people will come along and then come to these conclusions as I did, on their own or somewhat on their own. But others will find out after they've invested much blood, sweat, and tears in this movement, and then find out what we are really about, and they will feel lied to, and they will not be wrong. And then the battles start, with the moderates acting as if they are doing us radicals a favor by tolerating us in their party, when the opposite, though not in the demeaning sense of tolerating, is true. The LP is a radical destinational party that welcomes directional members. It is not a moderate destinational party that allows for its few crazies that want to far overshoot the mark. It is the inverse of a haircut. If I'm going for a short pixie cut, the smaller snips along the way are just fine, but damned if anyone is going to tell me, well, that's enough. You get out of here with that punky short hairdo idea of yours. And logically, that is the only way there can be any kind of big tent. The smaller steps have to be encompassed in the larger. Otherwise, it's not a community tent, but a very, very exclusive club in which one must only dress in a certain way. But, you know, they're okay with the shanty town on the outskirts because, you know, who else then would mow the lawn and do other chores? But those people must know their place, those radicals. Be seen and not heard. And I say, yes, I do not consent to that. Get bent. What I also liked about that mission statement is that we are all supposed to fight beside each other for as long as we are on the same side. And we are on the same side in so much. Now, in addition to that mission statement, the LPRC had also adopted 5 key points, which described their point of view and methodology, which, interestingly, and not particularly surprisingly, is the very same methodology that was resolved officially as the position and strategy of the party in the 1970s, quite demonstrably carrying on the founding tradition of the Libertarian Party. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Now, I am using the Radical Caucus to present some concepts and ideals. But I'm doing this simply as a vehicle for discussion, and I'm not trying to promote the caucus or convince you to join them or any other caucus for that matter. If it interests you and you would like to make common cause with some people who are my siblings in liberty, go check them out at lpradicalcaucus.org. And with that, I will now just discuss the concepts and principles and leave the internal caucus politicking structure aside, because it is the concepts and principles that I am interested in. And what I am going to do is go through the 5 principles, give you the title, give you the long description, and then the summary. And we'll do that for all 5. First one, natural rights are utilitarian. The central commitment of the Libertarian Party should be to individual liberty. Our goal should be to illustrate convincingly that there is no essential separation between natural rights and utilitarianism. That is, the morally correct choice yields the most benefit for the greatest number of people. Then the summary statement was, the Libertarian Party should support individual liberty because it's the right thing to do, and because it's the best way to benefit the greatest number of people. Principle number 2. Radical abolitionism. As the word radical means going to the root of something, radical libertarians should not merely propose small changes to the status quo and debate the fine points of government policy with the opponents of freedom. Instead, libertarians must always make clear that the outright removal of the injustice and interference of the state is our ultimate goal. Speaking from our basic principles avoids the quagmire of self-imposed obligatory gradualism. Rather than offering compromise, we should demand what we really seek, a free society, and let our opponents offer the compromises. And the summary to that was, the Libertarian Party is the only political party that traditionally advocates for real freedom from government interference. We should emphasize this revolutionary approach rather than watering it down with uninspiring language that is a de facto endorsement of the status quo. Next point, principled populism. The Libertarian Party should be a mass participation party operating in the electoral arena and elsewhere, devoted to consistent libertarian principle and committed to liberty and justice for all. The Libertarian Party should trust in and rely on individuals to welcome a program of liberty and justice, and should always aim to convince people of the soundness of libertarian principles. Simply repeating our basic principles and not proposing transition measures is ineffective in the short run because only a small part of the populace is interested in liberty in the abstract. And hiding or abandoning our principled position is ineffective in the long run because it fails to sustain us as a movement and attract and retain new libertarians. The summary to that is, our language should inspire by reflecting our goals, not the compromises we may have to accept on the way to gaining them. The Libertarian Party should be active in all areas of the political sphere with the expectation that individuals who hear and understand our message of freedom and the steps we can take today to increase liberty will choose to join enthusiastically in our journey. And the last one. No particular order. The removal of one harmful government policy should never be held hostage for the removal of another, as this throws self-imposed barriers in the path of liberty and removes potential pressures for change. For example, saying that borders may be opened only after welfare is eliminated is unacceptable. The proper position is to push for both changes. Should we succeed in achieving open borders only to find that welfare burdens are increased, this should be used as an additional argument to abolish welfare. And the summary there is, the Libertarian Party should always steadfastly oppose harmful government policies, regardless of any promise that supporting one bad policy will ensure that another is abolished. And what struck me as genuinely sad is that these ideas will sound at best strange to many LP members and at worst scandalous. Yet this was, in fact, and undoubtedly the strategy of the early party, at least officially so. And this is not by any inference of mine colored by confirmation bias. In 1977, this was the officially adopted strategy via resolution of what would become the LNC. And I quote, "We must hold high the banner of pure principle and never compromise our goal, a world embodying the Libertarian Party statement of principles. We must work to achieve our pure goal. The moral imperative of libertarian principle demands tyranny, injustice, the absence of full liberty, and violation of rights continue no longer. Any intermediate demand must be treated, as it is in the libertarian platform, as pending achievement of the pure goal and inferior to it. Holding high our principles means avoiding completely the quagmire of self-imposed obligatory gradualism. We must avoid the view that, in the name of fairness, abating suffering, or fulfilling expectations, we must temporize and stall on the road to liberty. Achieving liberty must be our overriding goal. We must not commit ourselves to any particular order of destatization. Is that how you say it? Destatization. Yeah, destatization? Whatever. For it would be construed as endorsing the continuation of statism and the violation of rights. Since we must never be in the position of advocating the continuation of tyranny, we should accept any and all destatizing measures wherever and whenever we can. The goal of liberty must always be the important consideration, not organizations or activities themselves. In short, the means must never be allowed to become ends in themselves. And there was one thing added to this, and that was the end of the quote for a moment. So there was one thing added, because this would seem to preclude Mr. Dancing Naked Man. But if you look at the activities of the party during this time, it would not preclude some other things that we really have sticks up our butts about today. So I continue the quote. Since our goal and principles are radical enough, we should avoid any extra alienation of people by the form of our presentation or by our image. In short, our content should be embodied in an image appropriate to our status as a national party, aiming to become a new majority. We must bear in mind, however, that we must always distinguish ourselves from the conservative movement and emphasize that we are not on the left-right political spectrum. And I end quote. And isn't that interesting? They were really taking pains to distinguish ourselves from the conservative movement. And that's something we still need to do today. And I maintain that if we had stayed true to this idea, to this strategy, to this view, to this vision, rather than this constant division between a so-called pragmatism that is antithetical to our founding and to the spirit, we might have seen the world set free in our lifetimes. And I say so-called pragmatism because pragmatism on its own, to channel Ayn Rand, is a floating abstraction. Without an object, it begs the question. Pragmatism is what practically works. Well, what's the what that we are saying would work? That begs the question, works to do what? And that is where the muddy waters do run shallow. What we are working for is a world set free in our lifetimes and the implementation of the Statement of Principles. We are not working to win for the sake of winning or for the sake of having linos in office. What works is not always what is modest or moderate, which is the bait and switch that keeps being done. What is our goal will determine what actually works. And a radical goal pragmatically requires a radical means. I honestly do not know why those to whom this is shocking bother with the Libertarian Party and then try to make those who actually believe this shit think that they are the problem. No one is happy and nothing gets accomplished, and we need to be unafraid to say that. Everyone who wants to be welcome is welcome. But if this radical revolutionary idea is not your jam, best wishes. I have an anecdote. I used to be really, really into debate forums, and I spent many years as a member and a moderator at a particular forum, but I never really got along with the forum owner, and eventually he threw me off along with a bunch of my friends, and some others simply left in protest at the shocking treatment. Yes, Christians can be just as melodramatic as libertarians. And we could have all just gotten sock accounts and rejoined and just pestered the hell out of that forum and just, over and over and just tried to make square pegs fit into round holes. But we didn't. What did we do? We started our own theology debate forum. And then inevitably years later, when others did not get along with or agree with us, this is what we said. Well, then go start your own forum. We pretty much proved that anyone can do it. So for those trying to make the Libertarian Party into something it is not, go roll your own. I'm not saying that because I want to be a debate club. I am saying that because I precisely do not want to be a debate club. I want to change the world with like-minded people and achieve our goal, and we will not do that if we are of two minds. What has caution gotten us? The best vote totals ever in 2016? Well, that's true. And in isolation sounds fantastic, though I will say, if you're trying to cross a chasm, so you got 90% of the way there, your butt's still falling down and dying at the bottom of the ravine. But besides that, in isolation, yes, these vote totals were fantastic. But was the public educated on our statement of principles? Did our membership and donations skyrocket and maintain themselves? Is under 5% all that great when the other options in that election were Caligula and the Countess Bathory? Let's be realistic. Right now, the Libertarian National Party's budget is under $2 million a year, and we have under 15,000 dues-paying members. In 1990, we had over 30,000 dues-paying members and over $3.6 million budget, and that is in those dollars of today. And we loudly proclaimed our principles at that time. We have sold our birthright for a mess of pottage. And as my friend and fellow radical, Rabbi Mark Montoni, has said, why hold back if you're not going to win? And I would add, what have you won if you held back anyways? You're either betraying your principles or lying to your supporters. And as he concluded, if you're only interested in tinkering around the edges, reforms that are tepid and fearful, why are you even in the Libertarian Party? There are already two major political parties that are much better suited to dancing around and pandering. Even the respectable Hayek, who certainly is not known as some flaming radical, had this nailed. And I quote, "We must make the building of a free society once more an intellectual adventure, a deed of courage. What we lack is a liberal utopia, a program which seems neither a mere defense of things as they are, nor a deluded kind of socialism, but a truly liberal radicalism which does not spare the susceptibility of the mighty, including the trade unions, which is not too severely practical, and which does not confine itself to what appears today as politically possible. We need intellectual leaders who are prepared to resist the blandishments of power and influence and who are willing to work for an ideal, however small may be the prospects of its early realization. They must be men who are willing to stick to principles and to fight for their full realization, however remote. Free trade and freedom of opportunity are ideals which still may rouse the imaginations of large numbers, but a mere reasonable freedom of trade or a mere relaxation of controls is neither intellectually respectable nor likely to inspire any enthusiasm. The main lesson which the true liberal must learn from the success of the socialists is that it was their courage to be utopian which gained them the support of the intellectuals, and thereby an influence on public opinion which is daily making possible what only recently seemed utterly remote. Those who have concerned themselves exclusively with what seemed practicable in the existing state of opinion have constantly found that even this has rapidly become politically impossible as the result of change in public opinion which they have done nothing to guide. Unless we can make the philosophic foundations of a free society once more a living intellectual issue and its implementation a task which challenges the ingenuity and imagination of our liveliest minds, the prospects of freedom are indeed dark. But if we can regain that belief in the power of ideas, which was the mark of liberalism at its best, the battle is not lost. And I end quote. And oh my goodness, that makes me just want to get out there, right? And here, I got that quote from Rothbard, who was commenting almost exactly the way I had been affected by that Hayek quote. Hayek is highlighting an important truth and an important reason for stressing our ultimate goals. The excitement, enthusiasm that a logical system can inspire. Who, as he said, in contrast, will go to the barricades for a 2% tax reduction? No one. Think of the American Revolution. It was not tepid. And it was just a few people who were wildly and radically inspired. And I continue to quote Rothbard. Such an abolitionist perspective does not mean, again, that the libertarian has an unrealistic assessment of how rapidly his goal will, in fact, be achieved. Thus, the libertarian abolitionist of slavery, William Lloyd Garrison, was not being unrealistic when in the 1830s he first raised the glorious standard of immediate emancipation of the slaves. His goal was the morally proper one, and his strategic realism came in the fact that he did not expect his goal to be quickly reached. We have seen that Garrison himself distinguished, and this is Rothbard quoting Garrison, urge immediate abolition as earnestly as we may. It will, alas, be gradual abolition in the end. We have never said that slavery would be overthrown by a single blow, but that it ought to be, we should always contend. End quote. And Rothbard also noted that Garrison also famously said, gradualism in theory is perpetuity in practice. And continuing with Rothbard, gradualism in theory indeed undercuts the goal itself by conceding that it must take second or third place to other non- or anti-libertarian considerations. For a preference for gradualism implies that these other considerations are more important than liberty. Thus, suppose that the abolitionist of slavery had said, I advocate an end to slavery, but only after 10 years' time. But this would imply that abolition 8 or 9 years from then, or a forte immediately, would have been wrong, and that it therefore would be better for slavery to be continued a while longer. But this would mean that considerations of justice have been abandoned, and that the goal itself is no longer held highest by the abolitionist or the libertarian. In fact, for both the abolitionist and the libertarian, this would mean that they are advocating the prolongation of crime and injustice. And I'm done with the block quoting, but I can't say it any better than Hayek or Rothbard. I'm really asking you to ponder this. And when we come up against these hard tests, when we're asked to step on the third rail, we do so, and we do so with principle. Doesn't mean we have to do so with jackassery. We can do so with empathy, but with principle, justice, and truth on our side. So, in the next few episodes, with this foundation in mind, I'd like to examine all 5 of those key points outlined earlier, one by one, and see how it was that these were adopted by the modern LPRC, but what they actually are was the founding seed of the early party. The first one we will examine is natural rights are utilitarian, which, if I am going to be honest, triggered the absolute fuck out of me the first time I heard it. But today I do embrace it fully. But I would maybe reword it as natural rights are pragmatic. Let's let the prags get triggered for a while, right?
I find the word hobnob very phallocentric.
Fuck off, Jamie.
Alrighty. Thank you, everyone. And I look forward to bringing you more content. Look forward to your suggestions as to what you would like to hear. And I encourage you to check out the show notes for ways that you could support me as I desperately need it. So until next time, you have an awesome day. Mi guapas de libertad.
Thank you for listening to The Big L, where size does matter. Subscribe today and help support the show by going to BigL013.com. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.
I must take this time to disseminate the appropriate disclaimers and advisories. If it pleases the Crown, while I am an officer of the National Libertarian Party and have in fact sold my soul to the blessed chicken on a stick, all opinions, perspectives, rants, jokes, and outbursts of any and all kinds are solely me speaking on my own behalf and not on behalf of the party. I am not the party spokesperson, just a fanatic who happens to hold a position. Before anything else, I am a liberty activist, just like you. And if you call me a politician, I die a little inside. Thank you.